My name's Ryan, I'm 31, and I've always been the quiet one in the family, the fixer, the peacekeeper, the one who made sure things didn't fall apart even when no one noticed. I never minded being in the background. Growing up, my younger brother Mason was the golden child, athletic, popular, naturally charming in that effortless way that draws people to him without even trying. I was the one with the decent grades, the part-time job, and the emergency fund. He was the one with the Instagram highlights and the constant stream of validation. And honestly, I was fine with that. Until the day he made me feel invisible in front of everyone, after everything I'd done for him. Mason had just finished his business degree, barely, if I'm being honest. He coasted through college on a combination of charm, group projects, and parental excuses. Still, my parents treated it like he'd just cured cancer. They wanted to throw a graduation barbecue for him, and since they were a little tight on funds, I stepped in without hesitation. I offered to cover the food, hire a photographer, even manage the grill so everyone could enjoy themselves. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I thought that's what family does. I spent nearly $600 on brisket, ribs, drinks, and sides. Another $150 on a photographer that I booked last minute after Mason complained none of his friends could take good enough pictures. And I didn't mind any of it. Not at first. The morning of the barbecue, I got there early to set up. My parents were running late, as usual, and Mason hadn't even shown up yet. I dragged folding tables from the garage, wiped down the patio chairs, and unpacked the coolers by myself. By the time the guests started trickling in, I was already sweating through my shirt, flipping burgers, and trying not to burn the chicken wings. Mason strolled in almost an hour later, wearing designer sunglasses and a fake humble grin. He made a dramatic entrance like it was a movie scene, hugging people, clapping backs, handing out inside jokes like candy. When he passed by me, all he said was, "Yo, save me some of those ribs." I didn't think much of it. I figured he was just caught up in the moment. But as the afternoon wore on, the pattern became harder to ignore. Every time someone asked who planned the event, my mom would gush about how she and Mason really pulled it together. My dad told someone I was just helping out a bit. I smiled through it. I kept grilling. I handed out plates and refilled drinks and picked up empty cans while everyone else laughed in the shade. But the moment that really stuck with me, burned into my memory like a brand, came later, when the photographer was lining everyone up for a group shot. I had just brought out a second tray of chicken and wiped my hands on a towel when I asked Mason, "Hey, where should I stand?" He didn't even hesitate. He turned to me, grinned like he was being clever, and said, "Somewhere out of frame. This day isn't about you." I didn't say anything. I didn't even blink. But the second he turned away, I felt something shift in me. My stomach dropped, not from surprise, but from clarity. That line wasn't just a joke. It wasn't just an offhand comment. It was a reveal. That's how they all saw me. A background character. A utility. Someone useful, but not worth acknowledging once the job was done. And when I looked over at my parents, who were laughing along like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard, I felt something harden in my chest. I finished grilling in silence. I didn't eat a bite. I made sure the trash was bagged, the coolers were closed, and the leftovers were packed neatly into the fridge. When people started leaving, I stood off to the side. No one really said goodbye to me. Not even Mason. He was too busy posing with friends, making sure his new haircut caught the light just right. My parents waved me off like a caterer they didn't plan to tip. And I drove home that night in a kind of quiet fury I hadn't felt in years. Here's the thing nobody knew. Mason's been living in an apartment I leased under my name. 6 months ago, when he claimed he needed a fresh start, but didn't have the credit or the funds to get approved, I co-signed for him. More than that, I've been covering half the rent every month without telling anyone. I figured it was temporary. I figured once he got a job after graduation, he'd start taking over. But the truth? He never even tried. I checked the rental portal a week before the barbecue. He hadn't logged in once. Not even to see what the balance was. And I never told him, because I thought he'd feel ashamed. I thought he'd want to prove himself. That night, when I got home, I logged in and unlinked my account. Then I messaged the leasing office and informed them that I'd be removing myself from the lease at the end of the month. I gave them Mason's contact info and told them to reach out directly going forward. I didn't tell Mason. I didn't tell anyone. I just waited. For days later, I saw him post a selfie at a rooftop bar with the caption, "Finally done with school, time to enjoy life, #blessed." 2 days after that, the first text came in. He texted, "Yo bro, rent's acting weird. Site won't load. Can you check?" I didn't reply. He texted again. Bro? Hello? Did I got a notice from the complex about missing rent and lease stuff? What's going on? Still, I said nothing. Then this morning, I woke up to the message that made me sit up in bed and read it twice. Mason texted, Bro, please. I've got nowhere to go. And that's where things get interesting. I stared at that message for a long time. Nowhere to go. The words felt surreal coming from him. Mason, the one who always landed on his feet, who always had someone cleaning up behind him, covering for him, forgiving him. He wasn't used to consequences. He was used to getting away with things because someone like me would sweep in and patch it all up before anything truly fell apart. I didn't reply. I got up, made coffee, and sat on my small balcony, watching the city wake up while my phone buzzed beside me like a broken alarm clock. I watched as message after message came through. First Mason again, then Mom, then Dad. Mason texted, Can we talk? Please. Mom texted, Ryan, I heard Mason's having a bit of trouble. Could you be a dear and help him out just until he gets back on his feet? Dad texted, You know your brother's not great with finances. Why would you just drop this on him out of nowhere? That one made me laugh. Drop this on him? Like I hadn't been carrying it for 6 months. Like I hadn't silently paid his way, protected his pride, and stood by while they ignored it all. Like the money just floated in from nowhere and landed in his rent account. I didn't reply to any of them. Not yet. Instead, I thought back to a very specific moment about 2 years ago, just before Mason moved into his college apartment. We were sitting on the curb outside my place, splitting a cheap pizza, and he had just failed another internship interview because he forgot to show up. I'd asked him what his plan was, and he just laughed and said, Come on, man. You know I always land on my feet. Worst case? I'll just crash with you. That moment had stuck with me, not because of what he said, but because of how easily he said it. He didn't ask. He knew. He counted on me always being there, no matter how little effort he put in. And at the time, I'd accepted it. I thought that was my role in the family, the net under the tightrope. The guy who doesn't get invited into the frame, but still props up the show from behind the scenes. But now, something had shifted. That cookout had peeled back the final layer. I didn't want revenge, not really. I didn't want to hurt him. I just didn't want to play that role anymore. Not when it cost me peace, self-respect, and thousands of dollars no one even noticed leaving my account. By Thursday, the messages had turned from confusion to desperation. Mason texted, They're saying I've got till the 1st. Bro, I don't have it. I really need your help. Can we just talk? Please. I messed up. Mom texted, Ryan, this isn't like you. You've always been the one we could count on. Dad texted, Let's not make this a big deal. Just get things sorted so your brother doesn't end up on the street. That last part made me pause. Not because I cared about Dad's usual dismissiveness, but because of how casually he wrote it. Just get things sorted. Like that's all I was, some behind-the-scenes fixer sent to keep Mason's life smooth. That night, I finally responded, but not to them. I logged into the shared Google Drive folder where Mason had kept his graduation photos, the ones taken by the photographer I'd hired. The ones where he stood surrounded by friends, smiling in front of the backyard balloons I'd inflated, the food I'd grilled, the decorations I'd set up. I went through the folder carefully, picked out a dozen of the best shots, and edited them lightly to add a simple caption at the bottom of each, photographed and funded by the guy told to stand out of frame. Then I made a new folder, uploaded them, and set the sharing permissions to public. I copied the link and sent it in a group text to Mason, my parents, and, why not, a few extended family members who'd been at the party. I said, just wanted to make sure everyone remembered who made that day possible. Since I was told to stay out of frame, I didn't say anything else. It didn't take long for my phone to ring. First it was Mason, then Mom, then Dad. I let every call go to voicemail. I wasn't interested in hearing their justifications or guilt trips. I wasn't looking for an apology either, not anymore. I just wanted them to sit with it. To feel that little pang of discomfort, that small spark of maybe we were wrong. That weekend, I took a long drive out of the city, rented a small Airbnb cabin up in the hills, and unplugged. No signal, no messages, just quiet. I left my phone face down and let the world figure itself out. When I got back on Monday, there were 15 missed calls from Mason. 4 from Mom, 2 from Dad, and 1 new message from an unknown number. Is this Ryan? Mason listed you as an emergency contact. I'm the leasing manager for his building. We're trying to work out a payment plan before next week. Would you be willing to discuss options? I read that 1 3 times before finally turning off the screen. They'd all made it so clear that I wasn't supposed to be part of the picture. So I finally listened. The next day, I got a call at work from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I don't answer unknown calls, but something in my gut told me to pick this one up. Sure enough, it was Mason. Not from his usual number. He must have borrowed someone's phone, but his voice was unmistakable. Panicked, brittle, and laced with just enough charm to try and slip past the consequences clawing at his heels. "Bro," he said without preamble. "Please. I know you're mad. I get it." What I said was out of line. It was just a joke, okay? Everyone was laughing, and I didn't mean to. I didn't say anything. He continued, rushing now, trying to fill the silence. "Look, I got the notice. I've got until the 1st. They're saying if I don't pay, they're gonna start the eviction. I'm trying to figure it out, I really am, but man, I'm underwater here. I just need a little more time. Just help me with this one last month, and then I swear." "You smirked at me," I said quietly, cutting him off. "Like I was in your way." There was a pause on the other end. A long one. "Mason," I said, letting his name settle like a weight. "Do you even remember who paid the deposit for that place?" Another pause. "You did. Do you remember who's been covering the rent every other month while you partied and posted photos about living your best life?" "Yeah." "No, you don't. Because if you really remembered, you wouldn't have opened your mouth at that barbecue. You wouldn't have let mom and dad laugh along like I was the help. You wouldn't have deleted me from the story while standing in the middle of everything I built for you." His voice cracked slightly. "I said I was sorry." "No. You said you didn't mean it." "That's not the same." I could hear him breathing, trying to find the right combination of words that would unlock the old dynamic. The one where I'd cave, make it all better, and pretend nothing ever happened. But I wasn't that version of myself anymore. This isn't about rent, Mason. It's about respect. And you didn't just forget to show it. You went out of your way to humiliate me in front of everyone. And now that the consequences are finally catching up, you're calling me from someone else's phone hoping I'll swoop in and save you." His voice dropped. "So what? You're just gonna let them kick me out?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted him to sit with the question. Really sit with it. "You were given every opportunity to stand on your own," I said finally. "I covered for you. Silently. I didn't shame you. I didn't throw it in your face. I let you build a life on support you didn't even realize you were getting. And the first time I asked for something as small as a seat at your celebration, you told me to stay out of frame." Silence. Then, "Bro, where am I supposed to go?" It wasn't mocking anymore. It wasn't arrogant. It was raw. And part of me, the part that had always wanted to be needed, almost softened. Almost. "I don't know," I said calmly. "Maybe somewhere you don't smirk at the person holding the camera." And then I hung up. That same night, the group chat with my parents and Mason lit up. First came the blame. Mom texted, "Ryan, that was cruel. He's your brother." Dad texted, "You've made your point, okay? Now stop playing games and help him. This is what family does." Mom texted, "How can you be so cold? He looked up to you." That last message made me pause. "He looked up to you." No, he didn't. He looked past me. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a private album on my phone I'd been building quietly over the last 6 months. Screenshots of the rent payments, invoices from the barbecue, the photographer's contract, grocery receipts. I wasn't planning to use them, but I'd kept them as a way of reminding myself I wasn't imagining things, that I had done more than they ever noticed. Then I sent a single message to the group. Respect isn't something you ask for only when you need help. If you can't give it in public, don't ask for support in private. Then I left the group chat. The fallout came in waves. My aunt texted me 2 days later, saying she heard Mason was couch hopping and asked what happened. I told her the truth. Not with bitterness, just facts. She went quiet after that. My sister, who had always been the quiet observer in the family, sent me a single message later that week. "I saw what they did at the barbecue. You didn't deserve that." It was the first time anyone had acknowledged it. As for Mason, I heard through the grapevine that he'd moved back in with a college friend temporarily, sleeping on a futon in a cramped living room. His social media went quiet. No more rooftop bars. No more humble brag captions. Just silence. But the silence didn't bother me. For the first time in years, it felt peaceful. What they didn't realize, what Mason didn't realize, was that I never needed praise. I never needed a standing ovation. I just wanted to be treated like a person. Like a brother. Like someone who mattered. Instead, they made sure I stayed out of frame. And now? They're finally learning what it feels like when the person out of frame quietly steps away from the camera, along with the hands that were holding everything together. But that wasn't even the final blow. And what I did next? Well, let's just say they won't forget it anytime soon. I waited a full 2 weeks before making my next move. It wasn't out of spite, it was out of intention. I wanted Mason to sit with the discomfort. I wanted my parents to feel the weight of what they'd dismissed so casually. Sometimes, silence delivers a sharper blow than shouting ever could. I hadn't blocked any of them. I didn't need to. They knew I was there. They knew I was watching. But I wanted them to truly grasp that I was no longer the man in the background holding the strings together. I wasn't their fixer anymore. And when they realized that, really realized it, they'd either learn or they'd unravel. That's when the email came. It was from Mason's landlord, the same leasing manager who had reached out earlier. This time it was official. Mason's rent had not been paid, and the 3-day notice had expired. They were proceeding with formal eviction filings unless payment was received in full within 72 hours. Normally, this would have triggered me into motion. I would have called the leasing office, negotiated some deal, paid a chunk of the balance, and told Mason he owed me later. That had always been our unspoken pattern. But not this time. Instead, I replied with a short message. I am no longer financially involved in this lease. Please direct all further communication to the listed tenant. That same day, I got a call from my dad. I let it ring out. Then another from my mom. Voicemail. Her voice sounded tired. Not angry, tired. Ryan, this has gone far enough. He's your brother. This isn't who you are. You've always been the good one, the generous one. We don't understand why you're doing this. Please call us. There it was again, that same backhanded flattery. The good one. Code for the one who keeps swallowing the pain quietly and shows up anyway. I stared at my phone for a moment, then opened my contacts and did something I should have done years ago. I renamed both Mom and Dad and my phone to their actual names. Not as an act of cruelty, but as a quiet boundary. A reminder to myself that respect had to be mutual to mean anything. 3 days later, the eviction went through. Mason was officially removed from the apartment. He didn't reach out right away. I think his pride had to bleed out a little first. But then, on a Sunday afternoon, I heard a knock at my door. I opened it slowly, and there he was, hood up, bag slung over his shoulder, duffel dragging at his feet. He looked different. Not physically, emotionally. Like someone who'd finally had to face the fact that the world didn't owe him a safety net. Can I come in? He asked, not making eye contact. I stepped aside and let him in. He stood in my hallway, not moving any further, like he didn't know if he was welcome past that point. I'm not here to make excuses, he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I didn't realize how much I took for granted. I thought you liked being the guy behind the scenes. I thought it didn't bother you. That you were just, solid. The one we could lean on. You never asked what it cost me, I said. He nodded slowly. I know that now. There was a long pause between us. He looked older in that moment, not by years, but by something deeper. A kind of weathering that only comes from finally being told no. After a lifetime of getting fine, I'll take care of it. I'll figure something out, he said. I just needed to say that to your face. I messed up. I was selfish. And I'm sorry. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it breathe. You've got a place to stay for 2 nights, I said finally. After that, I expect you to have a plan. You're not staying here for free, and you're not using me as a crutch. His shoulders slumped in relief, even though I hadn't given him much. That alone told me how low he'd fallen. He spent those 2 nights on my couch. We didn't talk much. I made dinner, he helped wash dishes. There were no deep heart-to-hearts. Just a quiet, awkward peace between 2 brothers finally seeing each other clearly for the first time. On the second night, he came to me with a piece of paper. It was a printed job application for a logistics coordinator role at a shipping company I used to contract with. Not glamorous, but steady. I don't have a car, he said, but I can take the bus. They're hiring immediately. If I can get this and stick with it, I can save up. Get back on my feet. I nodded. That's a start. He left the next morning, backpack slung over his shoulder again. I gave him $20 for the bus, not out of pity, but out of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this time he'd walk his own path instead of riding on mine. A few weeks passed. Then one evening, I got a text. Mason, got the job. First paycheck comes Friday. I'm not gonna mess this up. I didn't reply right away, but I smiled. Just a little. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. As for my parents, We didn't speak for nearly 2 months. They kept trying texting, calling, even sending a card for my birthday. But I didn't respond. I needed the space. I needed them to sit with the silence I had endured for years. Eventually, I agreed to meet them for dinner. I set the location. I picked the time. And when I arrived, I didn't rush to greet them. I let them see what it looked like when the one they always counted on finally made himself the priority. We had a long talk. There were apologies. There were justifications too, but I didn't let them stand. I made it clear that things would be different now, that I wouldn't tolerate being the invisible backbone of the family anymore. If they wanted me in their lives, they'd have to treat me like more than just the quiet one who always shows up. They agreed. Whether they meant it, only time will tell. But I left that dinner feeling lighter. Because for once, I wasn't standing in the background. I wasn't holding the camera. I wasn't paying the bill quietly while everyone else smiled for the photo. I was finally in the frame. And this time, I made sure everyone saw me.